The Monster Within, written by H. Paul Cote, read by James Eric Strange. A small introduction. The kid next door could be a monster. You never know until it's too late. A story about a young child growing up in a dysfunctional family environment, suffering from mental and physical abuse that shortens his childhood and molds him into a serial killer. Delve into his mind and witness how he plays the role of an innocent child to bring his mental madness to life, choosing his victims day by day and loving every minute of it as he creates his new world of serial killing. Inspired by true situations, this is an action-packed, horrifying, thrilling, and passionate experience you will never forget. Chapter 1, a child is born. Chapter 2, the monster slayer. Chapter 3, Earl, mother's boyfriend. Chapter 4, bandaging the cut-off toe. Chapter 5, the barn. Chapter 6, dog operating. Chapter 7, visiting Mr. Johnny. Chapter 8, calling 911. Chapter 9, making chloroform. Chapter 10, taking care of mother. Chapter 11, riding the bus. Chapter 12, job at the pig farm. Chapter 13, taking out the trash. Chapter 14, getting set up for tonight. Chapter 1, a child is born. On a hot July summer night, before the break of dawn, a child is born without the choice of life or death, learning to endure and embrace anger. A monster that is created from birth, like a rose planted in a desert, and left alone with the weeds and thorns to take over, giving it a bitter and prickly way to live. Everything seemed normal to him from the beginning. Not having anything to base a comparison on, the wrath that was laid upon him seemed as if it was typical. With the ridicule and the condescending rage, and the same essence as an animal being branded or led to slaughter. From birth, this was all that he ever knew. He would find himself growing up in a room alone, left with only toys surrounding him. As he would begin to hear and recognize the anger, raging out, echoing through the halls of the house, he would try to escape in his mind along with his toys. Soon coming unspooled, with his nerves ready to bite down into anything to relieve the pain that had been brewing in the back of his mind. Looking for a way to release his anger, he begins to destroy his toys that he enjoyed and found sanctuary with, now beginning to feed the monster that has been encouraged to grow deep within him. As always, before the day would complete its cycle, he would get a visit from the monster slayer for more brainwashing on how he was no good, how he would never amount to anything. His mother's voice would ring out loudly. "I wish you had never been born. You're no more than a rut in the road from me." As he got older, he would find himself trying to loosen up his conscience from the anger that lives within the house, trying to endure every given moment into the television, hoping to find some gratitude of being alive and trying to live another day in the house of cards. On his 7th birthday, he receives a visit from his mother, bringing him a gift that may brighten his time. As he eagerly tore the paper off the box, he soon noticed it was a G.I. Joe toy. Not knowing how to handle this emotion from revealing TV programs of a happy family, he just nodded his head to her, faking a smile, and started inspecting the toy. She eagerly said, "Look what I got," as he continued to try to sink his mind in his toy and forget about her presence in the room, hoping of getting some positive reassurance of being a child in her life. Then he heard a yell. Faster than lightning, striking the ground, a thought came to his mind. She got me a dog. Something I can share my moments with, and maybe learn more about love as I seen on that late night movie last night. It was about a child that was given a small puppy, and how the young boy and the puppy grew to be one living on the farm. As the dog got older, it turned out to be a beautiful collie that would help to watch out for the boy as they had an adventurous life together. The movie would give you the image of them being best friends. The boy came back to his senses, thinking about the yelp of a small puppy. He eased his head up from sitting on the floor to gaze at his mother as she was holding a long-haired puppy that appeared to be a German Shepherd. In her arms as she was cuddling it and stroking it with her other hand, saying, "Look what I've got. He's so good to me and I just love him. I have to find him some bedding to place at the side of my bed." She looks down at the boy and gives him a condescending look. As if he could ever be good, I will let you pet him. Slowly, I lowered my head to the floor, thinking about the disappointment. Not sure how to handle it. She quickly turned around, lifting the puppy up over her head, saying, "You are just so cute." Now headed out the back door toward the barn, thinking to herself how she needs to find the dog something to sleep on. I leaned my body over and picked up my new toy, grabbing it under its body with one hand and grabbing its arms with the other. Pulling on it with a mighty thrust, I rip its arms off its body, dismembering it and slinging it up under my bed. I began gritting my teeth until the muscles up between my eyes and ears tightened. My eyes began to see dark green spots glittering around in the room. I could still feel the anger raging inside. I could feel my stomach muscles tightening and angry screams starting to come out of my throat. I began trying to grasp and control my anger, knowing if I let it out, I would surely get another beating from the monster slayer. Soon I got my arm back around and grabbed Joe's leg. I began pulling with all the power I had, tearing the leg from his hip and slinging it up under the bed to join its arm. Thinking to myself, share with me. Feel the pain of G.I. Joe. Now you can have a happy life. Then the thought occurred in my head, just like the song playing on your mind over and over, again and again, how she loves that dog more than me. I wanted to feel sad, but I always felt more anger than sadness, which brought up an old memory when I was little, how she would whip me if I cried. That night when I lay down trying to go to sleep, all I could think about is how she would have given me that puppy. I could hear the puppy yelping with a happy bark, like most puppies do, running around in your small litter. With a cheerful voice making its way down the hall, still hearing Mother saying, "You are so cute. I might just let you sleep upon the bed." Then I heard her holler with a loud voice, "Marion, are you in bed? You better be asleep. Can you hear me?" The anger continued to brew within my body. The rage so strong I could feel my leg clench and my arm beginning to tremble. I continued to lay there in my bed, wanting to hear her say something good in a motherly tone of kindness that would help me to fall off into a beautiful dream state of mind, getting my restful thoughts throughout the night. Sometimes when I would roll over to fall asleep, I would hope to wake the next morning smelling the scent of bacon and fresh fried eggs and biscuits coming out of the oven. My thoughts gathered and twisted in my mind. I knew this would never happen. It never happened in the past. Why should it happen now? But my confused state of mind would continue to resort to hoping that someday she would give me that motherly love that I had witnessed on TV. I could hear them continuing to play. She would say cheerful remarks to the puppy, telling it how much she loves it and is so cute, and she needed to think of a name for it. I wanted to reply and give her my suggestion of a name, but what's the need? She would say something mean back at me. I began to hear the puppy yelping again, of having joy and its gratitude of love. I rolled over toward the wall, holding my G.I. Joe figure tight, and pulled off his head, tossing it toward the wall. I could hear a thump as his head and body hit the wall and rolled underneath the bed, to soon join his arm and his other leg. That night I began to dream about what I'd like to do to that dog. Just let it feel the pain and the suffering that I hide in the hole I have deep inside me. In my dream, I sneak into my mother's room and grab the puppy, pulling parts off of him like my G.I. Joe toy and leaving them in her bedroom, giving the image of the dog just blowing up, scattering himself all over the floor. I began to go into deeper sleep and dream about a mother, a loving mother that would hold me and care for me and not put anything in front of me. A mother that I could share my inner thoughts with, and she would do anything to protect me as I would her. The next morning I woke up hearing my mother hollering, really more of a screaming, as if she was in pain. With curiosity building, I leaped up to my feet from my bed and ran down the hallway toward the back of the house to her bedroom door. As I pushed the door open, I noticed she was holding something tight in her arms that appeared to be limp. I quickly asked, "What's wrong?" After another 2 minutes of her sobbing, she turned to me and said, "He's dead. My puppy is dead. He died while I was sleeping last night." She looked at him, her eyes filled with tears, both of anger and of sadness. He was playing on the bed, wrestling with my hand, and after the late night show, we both fell asleep. He was sleeping at my feet. I went to roll over this morning, trying to get in one more nap before getting up. Her voice was strained and cracked as she went on, tears dropping from her cheeks onto the puppy's fur. I could feel my leg resting on him. I could feel his fur under my leg. I went to slide my leg back and forth like I was rubbing him. Her voice turned even more frantic now, growing louder and louder. I couldn't feel him moving. I reached down with my hands to grab at his head like I was going to pet him, and he felt cold. I quickly sat up on the side of the bed and reached around to grab him. He wasn't breathing. Mother buries her face in the puppy's body, sobbing into him. I don't understand how he could just die like that. He was so playful all that afternoon. I was standing there looking and thinking to myself, she will soon ask me to come near her for a hug. I continued to stand there, feeling puzzled about everything, hoping for a new beginning of some kind of love offering from her. I stood in the doorway for 10 or 15 minutes. She continued to hold her puppy and sob as she rocked back and forth while cuddling it as if it was a newborn baby that had just passed away. She could start bellowing out into the room to release some more tears and then suddenly start gasping for air. I began to feel so alone standing there, confused to the point where I felt disoriented, not knowing how to treat this. On television, someone would go over there and hug the person crying. I didn't feel that. I didn't feel like I was wanted. I would have had gotten slapped and hollered at or shoved away if I would have tried. My thoughts of her love with me quickly dwindled away. I now began to feel the anger raging in me, like a pot of soup boiling over and oozing its way down onto the stove. I stood there a little longer until I started feeling out of place. I began to itch. I could feel my body tingling as if there were thousands of needles sticking in me. Quickly taking an about face, I slowly walked my way back into my comfort zone, somewhere I could gather my thoughts, hoping to find a way to relieve these horrifying feelings dancing around in my head. Walking back, I couldn't help but feel as if I had something to do with that dog's death. Did I kill it while Mother slept? Could I have done such a horrible thing? Mother didn't act like she suspected me, but I sure did. The feeling that I murdered the puppy was heavy on my mind. but I didn't feel a bit of guilt or remorse. When I made it back to my room right away, I began looking around for something I could break or dismember. Making it to my hands and knees, looking in my toy box. Then a thought came to my mind. I swung my head around and peeked under the bed. I could see pieces of G.I. Joe scattered about, his head and his leg at one end and his arm and body at the other. I felt no sympathy for him. He may be the only one that feels the pain I do, and he needs to remain the same. Turning back around, I continued to dig into the toy box, digging and shuffling around. All of a sudden, I found my toy rubber knife. Quickly, I grabbed it up and began to feel the sense of security deep down in my body. I turned my head and noticed in the other corner of the box my old brown teddy bear. I grabbed him up by the neck and quickly slung my head around, making sure the coast was clear. Then standing up from my knees, I made my way over to the closet, where I began to open up the door. Turning my head and squinting my eyes toward my mother's room, I could still hear her crying. Stepping up into the closet and pulling the door behind me, leaving it slightly cracked so it would provide just enough light that I would need to help clear my conscience of love, I eased myself down to my knees. Putting one of the teddy's arms under my knee and grabbing his opposite leg, I started pulling out, reaching with my spare hand and pulling my knife out. Now slowly thrusting it into his leg. Over and over, I began to feel muscles tighten under my ears and dark green spots floating around in front of me, twinkling like stars. Soon, everything around me didn't matter. Drifting off into a blackout state in my mind, an angry voice coming up out of my chest. I went to stretch out my leg and I began to feel the wall. I became very confused at first and quickly opened up my eyes, letting them adjust for the darkness. As I went to feel around, I come to realize that I had passed out in my closet. After standing up and pushing the door, the light from my bedroom lamp quickly shined around my feet from where I was standing in the closet. Looking down to take a step toward me, I noticed cotton and a brown fabric cloth covering the floor. With confusion building on my face, I turned my body around to look and noticed the teddy's head facing down on the floor in the corner of the closet. Fear seeped in right away. I didn't want my mother to find this. I would surely get another beating, but this would definitely give her an opportunity to work out some of her anxiety on me. I looked around and noticed an empty shoebox. Kneeling down, I started dragging the cotton and fabric, making a big pile, picking it up and placing it into the shoebox, just like a casket. Reaching over, I grabbed another handful and shoved it down, starting to run my fingers through the box looking for any signs of his head. I didn't notice any eyes or nose in the box, so I turned around looking in the closet and then spotted Teddy's head in the far corner. Grabbing it with my hand and placing it in the box with the remainders, I could still feel some of the anger from earlier. Right away, I placed the top onto the shoebox, reinforcing the image of a coffin for my Teddy. I stopped to gather my thoughts. I just tell you, when I get that angry and my stomach is all in knots, it feels like the top of my head is going to explode. I couldn't feel any remorse and actually don't even remember doing it. Now holding it in my hand, trying to figure out what to do with the box. Do I put it in the garbage can? She would find it. She's always digging in there, putting things in or taking some things out. Go figure. For the time being, I slid him under my bed. Walking back toward the bathroom, I noticed she had finally quit crying. She was laying down in the bed and covered up. I couldn't even begin to wonder where the dog was. I I took a right turn and eased off into the kitchen. I decided to look in the refrigerator to get me a snack to eat. I could even hope for some leftovers maybe. As I was gazing off into the fridge, the light that was in there reflected off of a knife on the sink next to the refrigerator. Then it dawned on me, use the knife to dig a hole for the shoebox. It would be like hiding him. I would be the only one who knew where he was at. I turned my head around to make sure the coast was clear. I grabbed up the knife and slid it up my shirt sleeve. When I made it back up to my room, I knelt down to grab the shoebox. Once again, I noticed my G.I. Joe. While I had burying Teddy on my mind, I grabbed him up too. Laid out on my belly, I reach under and grab all of his parts, laying him on top of the shoebox. Making my way back up to my feet and easing over and grabbing the shoebox carefully, I looked through the doorway to make sure she was still asleep. The fear of being caught with my destroyed toys inching up the back of my spine. I began to tiptoe my way to the back door. Once I had made it outside, I began to feel relieved. I looked around quickly for the right spot, my head scanning the backyard. Then it comes to me as I stand on the back steps. I look over to where I buried my pet bird at the edge of the far end of the porch, quickly making my way around to the parrot gravesite. When I knelt down onto the ground, I noticed the dirt underneath the edge of the porch had no grass on it, the perfect place for a hole. Pulling the knife from underneath my sleeve, I began thrusting it into the ground, digging like a madman, digging like a thirsty well digger, needing to get this done before she wakes up and comes looking for me. After a little time had passed, I was finally scoping out the last hand of dirt and putting Teddy and G.I. Joe to rest. Once again, I felt no remorse, but I did feel relieved that they would not be found. I was the only one on earth who knows where they're at.
Viewing the video or giving us a like or subscribing makes us want to bring on a little more entertainment. Don't you agree?